Great. All right, that's going to kick us off. My name is Melody Malure. I am the City of Bozeman's Communications Coordinator. I'm excited to see you all here this afternoon on your lunch. I appreciate you being here on Zoom or on WebEx, the virtual setting. Again, I know that it can be fatiguing, so we appreciate you being here. I'm going to introduce the folks that you're going to hear the most from this afternoon, and I'll kick it off with Brian Heaston first. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Heaston. I'm the project manager here for the City of Bozeman Sourdough Fuels Reduction Project.
Thanks, Brian. Corey?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Corey Llewellyn. I'm the district ranger for the Bozeman Ranger District with the Custer-Gallatin National Forest. And thanks for taking some time this afternoon.
Great. Thanks to you both. So like I said, everyone, you're going to hear mostly from Brian and Corey tonight or today, and then a little bit from me at the very end, and then some time for questions as well. So like I said at the beginning, if you are unfamiliar with WebEx or you haven't been on WebEx in a while we're listening to Brian and Corey talk, you might want to familiarize yourself with the chat and Q&A function of WebEx. That will be how you can ask your questions of them in real time to get some information or some answers to things that might come up during our conversation. And our conversation here today is a little more informal than you might have seen us do in the past. We won't have a fancy PowerPoint or anything. We are just going to be having a discussion and update, and then we'll turn it over for questions. So Brian, why don't you kick us off here with just a general overview of what's been going on and what's been accomplished on the city lands?
You got it, Melody. Well, on October 11th, the public closure for the sourdough trail started, and that was to facilitate the helicopter work that's been ongoing since that point on City of Bozeman lands. Approximately 100 acres of city property has been treated for the removal of large diameter fuels. That's less than about 25% of the total city lands that are owned around the sourdough intake. Sourdough intake is important to the city. That's 40% of our municipal water supply source for our drinking water supply right there. So the purpose of the project here again is to reduce the risk to the drinking water supply in the event of a fire here in the drainage. The helicopter work again began October 11th, and the reason that we're using helicopters is the land there is steep, and we didn't want to have to cut in new roads and have the sedimentation impact from new roads that are associated with more conventional logging techniques when new roads do cut in. And the helicopter work has a lower kind of impact on the ground as well. So, you know, since October 11th, the helicopter's been flying approximately 6 to 8 hours a day, 4 to 6 days a week. So it's been in the air a lot, moving a lot of logs to our intake site, where they're being processed and decked and made available for hauling. By the end of the project, we're going to have approximately 200 log trucks that will move out of the drainage. And that's enough to build about 120 houses. So a good amount of timber is coming out of the drainage to remove that fuel there and reduce the fire risk.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Anything else you want to add?
So at this point, looks like the trail will be opening again tomorrow to public use. I want to mention that the helicopter work is still ongoing at this point. There are still logs that need to be flown on the west side of the canyon. The helicopter will be operating in that area Tuesday through Friday, if not a little further over the weekend here this week, flying those logs on the west side of the canyon over to the intake. The helicopter will not be flying over the trail, so it will be safe for the public use of the area. But we do ask that folks that are using the trail to stick to the trail itself. and recognize that, again, there will be helicopter logging operations occurring, and to beware the occasional vehicle that's going to have to move up the trail to get crews and equipment into the project area.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, turning it over to you, Corey, for a similar update on what's been going over on the Forest Service lands.
Yeah, you bet. So provide a quick update on ongoing actions with the Forest Service in conjunction with this project. As I think everyone hopefully knows by now, this fuel reduction project for the Watershed health, we're doing it together. We, the Forest Service and the city of Bozeman, we've been working collaboratively for well over 10 years and are very excited to be at the point where we're implementing also together. And so while the city has been implementing their fuel projects in Bozeman Creek, we also implemented mechanical treatments, about 25 acres of mechanical treatments. Those are logging activities. We did that together to try to minimize the impacts to the community, to minimize the impacts of the trail closure. And we're able to utilize a lot of the same equipment and same operators, just kind of working collaboratively together on the timing of that. And so as it relates to just our treatments in Bozeman Creek on National Forest, those treatments are now done. You will see those treatments if you hike up there tomorrow, just above, about a mile or so above the city of Bozeman work. They're thinning treatments. The fuel reduction, the work looks great. The operators did a really good job, minimal impact on ground disturbance, and really helped open up the canopy to provide for more favorable conditions to try to minimize impacts from a wildfire. So those 25 acres are done. We hauled out those trees as well during the last couple of weeks. And so we have now transitioned our mechanical treatments, the logging activity, over to the Moser Ridge, where we have the majority of our treatments. We have probably just over 800 acres of mechanical treatments that are starting to get underway in the Moser Ridge area. We're accessing that up the Highlight Canyon Road and then up the Moser Road system. And so those activities are ongoing as we speak. Also, in regard to 2021 accomplishments, we also treated about 250 acres of what we call small diameter thinning. If you were in the Leverage Gulch area or maybe in the Moser Ridge, you probably saw some of those treatments. Those treatments are really focused on thinning the smaller diameter, the 6-inch diameter, and smaller fuels, what we call ladder fuels, because they act like a ladder that allows fire to move from the ground up into the canopy. And that's what we're trying to do, is minimize the probability of that happening when we do have a fire. And so again, about 250 acres of those treatments were done in 2021. You'll notice in both the small diameter thinning as well as the mechanical treatments, you'll notice piles. The small diameter, the hand crew piles, those are pretty small. The mechanical piles from the logging activity, they're much larger. We're not going to be burning any of those this winter. We need those fuels to cure out. They need about a year for them to really dry. Then when we go to burn them, they'll consume and then everything will get cleaned up. And so we don't expect any pile burning this upcoming winter. In addition to the fuels work, to support the fuels work, we had several miles of our roads were all improved from a road maintenance perspective. And so if you were up in Moser Ridge, you probably noticed some of those improvements, much needed, definitely a benefit from these projects, is just doing some really important and much needed road maintenance on our road system. And then we also, as part of that, sprayed pre-treatment of noxious weeds along all of our corridors in Bozeman Creek as well as in the Moser area. So that kind of is a quick recap of the treatments that we've done so far to date.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Now, Brian, I know that you touched on this very briefly, but I'll just open it up to kind of talk about the state of closures, trails that are closed, trails that are opening, anything that might be coming in the future.
Yeah, so Sourdough will open to the public tomorrow. And again, the helicopter operation will be ongoing at that point to get the remainder of the logs flown down to the intake meadow so they can be processed and decked. The logs that you will see decked there at the intake will need to haul out Sourdough Canyon Trail during a second short period closure to the public in order to do a big push to get all those logs hauled out. Currently, we're looking at next week to have that second closure occur. It shouldn't last any more than 3 days, but there will be a large amount of timber deck there that you'll notice as you walk up the trail, and all that's going to have to come out during that second closure. So again, we're looking next week if the rest of the logs get flown here this week, and everything's looking good for that to happen.
Great. Corey?
Yeah, and just to add on to Brian's in regards to the topic about closures, obviously the closure on the National Forest will open up tomorrow as well on the trail system. And then during those 3 days next week, you know, we'll still be trying to the upper part of the Bozeman Creek from Moser Cutoff will be open up into the Mystic Lake area, and then we'll just be supporting those few days of a closure as the city finishes their operations.
Great. Yep, and I see Callie just dropped a question that I think I can answer. She says, if all goes to plan, what 3 days next week are you anticipating the trail to be closed? I'll answer for Brian here because I'm just talking right now, but we don't know for sure, Callie, what 3 days. I think that ideally it would be earlier in the week, but what we do know is that we're trying to get a definitive date set by this Wednesday by the end of the day. So if you are subscribed for our email newsletter on bznwatershed.com, you will get an update immediately from us if you are subscribed. So by middle of this week, by the end of the day, we'll know exactly what 3 days next week will be closed. But since we don't know right now, I don't want to give you a date and then have that changed because obviously, like Brian said, there's some weather dependent and work dependent this week as well. Okay, so Brian touched a little bit on next steps, but I'm going to move us along to talk about implementation, what people can anticipate. And then Brian, do you want to just touch on that one more time, especially the safety component and making sure that people are safe over the next few weeks? And then Corey, will turn it over to you.
Yeah, so again, tomorrow there will be a helicopter operating within the sourdough drainage, getting logs flown to the intake meadow there for the city. That helicopter is going to be in the air beginning right around first light and probably working through most of the day. And that will be, you know, what's going to be happening here over the course of this week and maybe over the weekend too, in order to get those logs out, so that we can get them hauled at some point next week. So. We do ask that folks that are in the area, please do stick to the trail for your own safety. Again, the helicopter will be working on the west side of the canyon, so there won't be any flight path over the trail itself, you know, to keep people safe there. But there will be a helicopter in the air during most of the daylight hours.
Thanks, Brian. Corey, what about the Forest Service?
Yeah, so a few things in regard to next steps and what you may experience over the winter, and then briefly next summer as well. As I mentioned previously, winter operations will continue in the Moser Ridge area. We expect to have logging operations ongoing as long as conditions are favorable. Kind of depends on the snow level. But if you're recreating in that area, you can definitely expect to see log trucks coming down Moser Road and then out and down the Highlight Canyon Road as well as just seeing logging activity and treatments occurring throughout the winter. We also expect as we get into next spring, we will be looking at what we call burn windows. We have some broadcast burn prescribed fire treatments that we would like to get conducted. As of now, the area that we're looking to start treatments are about a mile above the Linger campground there on the west side of Highlight Creek. We prepped that unit this spring, actually, 2021. And by prepped, I mean, we built our fire line. We did some fuel reduction work to prepare the unit. We did not get a favorable window last spring. And so this upcoming spring, we're just going to be looking for the right conditions to do that prescribed fire. You will certainly hear a lot more about that as time gets closer. And then I think, let's see, in regard to closures as well, as of now, we don't expect any new closures throughout the course of the winter. As we progress into spring, we'll certainly have an area closure for any of our prescribed fire. And then as treatments get busy towards more populated trails, we could potentially have another area closure as we progress into the summer with some of our operations. Again, just a quick little heads up, we'll certainly have a lot more opportunity for engagement as time gets closer. And then I think the last two things to emphasize, I certainly concur with my colleague there, Brian. For those hiking up the trail tomorrow, please do give those operators plenty of space. What we care about the most is our own, your health and the public health and safety, and of course the operators' health and safety. So just please give plenty of space as things are getting finished up there in Bozeman Creek. And then the last piece, we expect to come back next spring and do maybe some final road work, make sure all the grading is the way that we would like it. We may have some additional weed spraying that we're going to do. So there'll be some ongoing kind of rehab work because it takes about a year or so for things to kind of get fully rehabbed from some of these operations.
And Corey, there was a question here that I think maybe you could answer. Mark asks, are there any current closures on the Moser Ridge roads coming up from Highlight Canyon?
Yeah, great question. As of now, no, there are not any closures, and we don't anticipate any closures. But I would emphasize, you can definitely expect to see log trucks. So just be heads up for log truck and equipment in the area.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian and Corey. So folks, that is the bulk of the information that we wanted to make sure we got to you all today. And I would love to see more questions in the Q&A section. Obviously, we're getting to those as they come in. So if any questions came up for you over the last 15 minutes or so, please drop those in the Q&A and we will answer questions until we run out of time or we run out of questions. But I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's on the call, anyone who watches this after the fact, especially for those who participated in the community engagement we did way last spring. For any of you who remember, we asked folks how they wanted that sourdough trail closure to go. We heard loud and clear you wanted us in and out as fast as possible. And we really appreciate that feedback because we were able to get that trail closed for 4 weeks and open it right back up again for you all to continue to enjoy. So I am just gonna leave it open here to see if we have any more questions come in. Brian or Corey, if anything else has come up for you that you wanted to make sure you added, this is a good time for you to add that too.
Yeah, I'll just say that, once this helicopter work and the logs are out of the drainage, that is not going to be the end of the city's efforts here in its fuels reduction project. You'll notice that that there's slash that's left in the woods here at this point that was generated with the helicopter work. That slash will be piled next operating season with hand crews as well as small diameter fuels removed, cut and piled for future burning. So that work we're hoping to get done here next operating season to pile the material that was left here with this phase of the work, and then get the small diameter fuels out of the remaining areas that were left untreated with this first kind of major effort of the city's project. Once the piles are made, they will be left to cure for a period of time until the suitable conditions for burning occur, and then they will be burned. So.
Thanks, Brian. All right, I haven't seen any more questions come in, so I'll give folks another minute or two here to throw in any questions. Obviously, if it's a question about maybe the work that's already happened, or even a question about what could be coming, I'll give you all another minute or so. And of course, I'll just put a little pitch in here while I'm waiting to see if anyone has anything else that they want to ask. That if you do not know about our website, bznwatershed.com, make sure that you check out our website. That is where you will go to sign up for an email notification, which is one of the first places where we will get that update about the 3-day closure out to. It's also a place where you can find the latest project updates that we put out, especially when there's a lot of work. We try to get those out every week or 2 weeks. And then you can also find additional documentation, additional ways to contact the folks that you've heard from here this afternoon. So it's a great resource, and that resource will remain available as the project continues. So it'll continue to be a great repository for information. All right, I haven't seen any more questions come in here. So like I said, if you think of a question after our presentation, you're welcome to reach out to us via that website. Make sure you sign up for the email notifications. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone for joining, and a thank you to Brian and Corey for being our informational sources here this afternoon. And with that, I'll say thanks to everyone and have a great rest of your afternoon.